Thank you for joining me today for another episode of the Healthy AF podcast. With me is Texas Slim, founder of the Beef Initiative. Slim, thanks for joining me today.
Zane, good to see you again. It's been since July 28th, I believe, was the last time we saw each other there in Nashville.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely right. At the Beef Initiative event. That's right. And so that was eye-opening for me in a lot of ways. The event itself, but just talking to you, doing our interview, really opened my eyes to some of the things we're going to talk about today, which is the stark difference between or what most people consider the beef industry, the big beef industry, where they get their beef at the grocery store, and then the independent ranchers who are really devoted to raising great beef and feeding our country. So that's what we're gonna dig into that and what you're doing with the Beef Initiative to help facilitate that. So I appreciate you taking the time to come on and help us better understand that. Let's jump in with, well, what is the Beef Initiative?
Well, to start off with, thanks, Zane. All of our, basically us joining together, it happened throughout a period of time. Rod with Bitcoin Park, he sent me an email and said, hey, you need to reach out to Zane. And so it's been a while since you and I have tried to get together, and, we're busy, but there's reasons behind. And that's what I like to do, is get perspectives of what's going on here, why the Beef Initiative was created and the way it's done, and why are you and I talking, as far as perspectives of the food industry and health industry, and just, where are we as a nation and where are we individually? But, over 4 years ago, the Beef Initiative, I'm basically a native Texan, sixth generational Texan. I come from the top of Texas up here in the Texas Panhandle. A lot of people have never been through the top of Texas. It's flyover country. It's got an interstate that runs through it, but what it is, it's cattle country. 85% of Texas cattle comes through the Texas Panhandle. And so I grew up with a very innate and intimate knowledge of our agricultural industry in the United States of America. I mean, I can talk cattle all the way back to, the beginnings of our nation's history, because, cattle has always been worshipped and honored by societies. And it's always been something that was ingrained in my DNA of my core belief system of understanding of where I come from, of what food is, and how I was raised. I was raised with a freezer full of beef. And that was pretty common back in whenever I was a child. Well, we've lost that as a nation. And I knew that we're in trouble as far as our food systems, as far as our cattle ranching in the United States of America has been basically scaled out and devalued in ways that the general public's not aware of. A lot of producers are not aware of. But what happened to me, I came from small town Texas, in less than 10,000 population, in a small town called Canyon, Texas. And whenever I was 19 years old, though, I tell people I come from agricultural poverty, because in the 80s, we had a financial crisis, kind of a liquidity crisis in agriculture. And I kind of suffered through that. And I was really the first generation. My parents were the first ones, probably, in modern times, that generation removed from the farm in the way they were, farm and ranch. I suffered from that, basically transition off the farm into, my mom being a breadwinner. She was a heritage woman, man. She's a farm girl. And all of a sudden, life changed in the 70s for American families. And so there's so much that I basically can speak to that speaks of agriculture, because when I was 19, I didn't have a future here in, the top of Texas. I went down to Austin and I self-taught myself technology, and I never went to university or anything, but I had a career in big tech, and I got out of big tech back in 2016, 2017, formally, pretty much for good, because I was done with it. And so I've got a hell of a skill set. I became a research analyst. And so I take all of that skill set and look at agriculture, my DNA, and basically my pedigree in agriculture, where I come from, and, looking at food systems, the health of a nation, what we've done in cattle industry in the United States, and what we've done to, middle America as far as the flyover states. What have we done to our soil? And so I created, the Beef Initiative, and I wanted people to basically look about where we came from in our food industry. Why did we in the 70s say that we were going to go feed the world? Well, we never fed the world, and the gig is kind of up. And I think a lot of people are waking up. Hey, what's going on with our health? What's going on with our food? And so what's going on with our food? And if we can look at that collectively from somebody like you coming from, healthy AF, from the health side of things, being in your 50s, I'm in my 50s. Let's look at it, our food systems again. Let's look at our basically our agriculture, our livestock, what has happened to it, and how can we move forward? So, my son, which is now 20, he can eat like I did, in my 20s, 30s, and 40s. We've got to look at that now as a nation. Where's our health and where's our food, and how are we going to approach that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I think really a conversation coming to the head. We just saw a lot of health influencer, both doctors and just coaches coming in front of the Senate last week, which didn't get a lot of mainstream press, but I think it was seen by a lot of us who pay attention to alternative health. And they were just basically speaking, our food system's broken and our nutritional guidelines have been basically infiltrated by industry.
Mhm.
And this is really, I think the people who are paying attention really tells us where this is going to come from, how it's going to change. It's grassroots. It's going to come
It
from
is.
the consumers who want more. They want better, like you said, for themselves, for their kids, like you mentioned. And they're going to have to, they're going to vote with their dollars before we see much change on from the public sector, from government or from industry. But it's this movements like this where you're connecting with ranchers, you're connecting with consumers, and you're helping people make that decision for themselves. And like you said, it's people have been, I think, since over the last 4 years, looking deeper into how they can impact their health, beyond or without influence from government or mainstream messaging, because they couldn't trust it. So I think, yeah, you're right on target with that. It's just, the timing of it is where people are looking and making decisions for themselves at last. And it's growing and it's growing.
Well, and this is what I knew, and it's a good kind of review there and good outline, Zane, because, what I started at, I wrote something called The Harvest of Deception back in 2021, but that was several years of research that I brought to market. And so, I knew all this is daunting, everything about it, everything that I do and I've touched is daunting. It's too big. It's too vast. How does the individual hear it? How does the individual hear it? Consumer? How does the mom hear it? How does the cattle rancher hear? Without judging people, and to give that real good perspective. So, saying that, I've got relationships with producers and ranchers. We've got over 250 that have come into the Beef Initiative, right? Because they want to go out there and feed a nation the way that we've been told that we were feeding a nation the last 50 years. And so right there, let's get perspective. And so awareness is coming, the nation's waking up. Hey, a lot of things aren't as we thought they were, right? So it's daunting. So where do we start? Well, we got to understand terms and basically what is market access? What is market access? Well, it's you, the consumer, being able to look at a product and saying, I want that product. Well, 50 years ago, we were able to look at beef and you had a different market access than what we have right now. And so I knew that I had to basically go out there and identify all the issues. That's the harvest of deception. But we also always, where I come from, you better start giving solutions before you're even done talking about the issues. Because we live in this attention economy. And back in 2021, COVID, everything that's going on, everybody's grabbing attention. What we have to understand is the Beef Initiative is basically industry specific, basically lifestyle apparatus corporation, but a collaboration, and it's grassroots. It's a collection of people across the United States, consumers, producers, ranchers, farmers, everybody come together and saying, hey, we're like-minded. Let's go out there and engineer some new solutions for everybody, because we know they're going to be wanting this here in about 4 years. Guess what? 2024, and this nation's waking up to that. So it's time to get moving. It's time to basically feed a nation in a way that this nation is really wanting to be fed, and thought that they were being fed in a lot of aspects, but they just aren't.
And so let's talk about that. Let's talk about the deception there. Let's talk about how
Sure.
the misconception about our food supply, our food systems, specifically meat,
Mhm.
because what I learned from talking to you guys, it was really eye-opening. I was just like, and it impacts so many areas. I realize that everyone's concerned about, but let's talk about where our meat is coming from that most people are buying in the grocery store, and how that's different from who you're
Sure.
connecting with.
And let's talk about livestock. I'll be using words, right? And it's pattern language words that we need to understand. I'll be using words like meat for reasons, beef, chicken, hog, poultry, fowl, all this type of stuff. These are data attributes in computers, and there's a reason why. But I'm going to talk about beef. I'll refer to hog and poultry, but just to start off, let's talk about Jimmy Dean. Okay, Jimmy Dean is an American icon where I come from as far as food supplies and just the character that he was back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. He comes from right over my shoulder, about 45 miles is where he was born. Okay, that basically food corporation, Jimmy Dean Meats, was established in Texas in 1969. Okay, well, now that Jimmy Dean Meats is now owned by the CCP of China. Okay. Okay, it's owned by Hormel, which is owned by Smithfield, which is owned by Tyson, which is owned by CCP of China. So Tyson is now owned by parts of the basically food corporation, because it's huge. You got domestic food corporations, you got global. Okay, so saying that Tyson is now owned by the CCP of China, that gives you understanding of who's making decisions to what you're feeding your children. Okay, so there's perspective. I'm going to talk about beef. Okay, the United States cattle industry right now, 80% of all beef in the United States is burger. Okay, remember that. 80% of all beef consumption in the United States is burger. Okay, 85% of all beef control, who controls basically the distribution of that beef after it becomes from cow to beef, okay, from a cow living beast into beef that you're going to feed yourself or your children, right? Okay, what happens during that time of basically that cow becoming, who controls the distribution of that? We need to really understand that 85% of animal protein in the United States of America right now is now controlled by 4 multinational corporations that do not have headquarters in the United States of America. So if they control 85% of all animal protein and the distribution thereof, from whenever it becomes a living animal to the basically to where it comes to your doorstep, to be at the supermarket or to your basically, your front porch. And, who is controlling that? Where does it start and where does it end up? And how did we lose control? And how did consumers in the United States lose market access to that beef that used to be domestic beef? Now we are a net importer of beef in the United States. Okay, we're eating foreign beef and shipping 80% of the best beef in the world overseas to the highest bidders. So Americans aren't even really collectively eating American beef anymore.
Wow, that is amazing. That is
yes,
the shocking part.
It's complex, it's like complex. Bidder, essentially. Pretty much. I mean, this is why I want to start in, we're not going to go off talking about fish, poultry, hog, everything. I just wanted to use Tyson and Jimmy Dean as an example. But if you look at, burger in the United States, 80% of it being, what we eat as a nation. Okay, well, what do we use for that burger? Well, most of the trim cut that we use to create the burger is foreign beef coming in from Uruguay, Australia, Africa, South America, be it Brazil, be it, wherever. It's foreign beef. We use a lot of our basically trim fat, the suet, and then we put it all in a big vat. And then, of course, we have burgers. So we're using domestic fat. Therefore, that's how they could skate around rules and regulations as far as labeling and, how do we control that cow that comes in as a living, being and beast, and then it leaves. Well, that's where, it's profit. There's a lot of things to be discussed here, subsidized. We subsidize our food industry to a point now to where, even the guys that are controlling the food supply, as far as, 85% of the animal protein in the United States, they can't even tell you where that beef is going as far as that one cow. And so that's where it gets very confusing, that we have to basically create a new awareness that people can understand where does it start and where does it end, and who controls it, and where we, as far as consumers, can now take control of our food supply. Same thing with the independent ranchers and producers that have now been kind of captured by this integration of a global food system.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So let's just say, in a consumer going to the grocery store, they're looking at they're going to buy some burger. They got a package of burger there. There's no way for them to know where that came from, obviously, right?
No.
There's no way to know. What would you say? You said it could come from multiple countries. The package of, let's say you got a 3-pound package of ground beef.
Let's get perspective, because it's a very important thing to talk about right now. Because if you have a 3-pound package of ground beef from Walmart, Costco, Whole Foods, it doesn't matter, right? Okay, what do you look at? What do you see on the label? It'll say product of the USA. Okay, it doesn't say anything else besides that, right? It'll probably say USDA approved. It'll say stuff like either grass fed. It'll say organic. It'll say stuff like that. In Asia, it'll say grain finished. In the United States, it'll say grass finished. So there's perspectives of East and West, and what's important, what's good, what's healthy, what's not healthy. But right there, if you go in the United States right now, there's not a country of origin labeling on our basically proteins, animal proteins. They don't have to. And who made sure that they didn't have to do that, right? Well, who controls the distribution of our animal protein? For multinational corporations that have unlimited amount of money to do a lot of lobbying in Washington, D.C. So why do we not have country of origin labeling on a product that should be really, really part of the marketing plan? Because we want clean, honest transparency in our food supply, right? That's why we have labels. But, they've basically, got to where beef, that you don't even know where your beef is coming from. And there's no way for them to tell you that. And they're not going to be honest with you, especially ground beef. They're not going to say, hey, this ground beef came from parts Africa, parts Australia, parts Brazil, parts, Uruguay, parts Texas, parts Canada, parts Mexico. A couple of years ago, south of San Antonio, on a USDA multinational processing center that kills over 5,000 cows a day, they did a study on a vat of ground beef, and they got 1 pound of ground beef. Once they were done processing, there was 92 different genetics of 92 different cows in that ground beef. That's just perspective that people can go, okay, wait, what's going on here? So,
wow. 92 different cows.
And 1 pound of ground beef. Yes.
And so that could be, like you mentioned before, multiple countries as well.
Yes. And, that's why I started with ground beef perspective. What happens, what is our consumption as a nation, whenever you think that you're feeding, somebody, it doesn't matter the marketing plan anymore. That's what I'm telling people. The one thing, and I'm known for creating phrases, it's time for a nation to go shake a rancher's hands. With all that information, what does this mean? It's daunting. It's overwhelming. It's time to reestablish relationships with those people that live and die to feed you. And so that's what the Beef Initiative has basically built, a peer-to-peer system to where we circumvent around all the censorship, all the technology, pay-to-play BS that you get now with Google, with everything. And now we are a decentralized peer-to-peer, consumer to producer, vertically integrated, decentralized food system that is 100% transparent, 100%, no hormones, no chemicals, no steroids, all of the things that this country is now waking up to, saying, hey, I want clean food again. I want truth in food, and I want purity in what I'm consuming. And I want to be able to feed my children something that's going to make them healthy, because right now we're killing our children within our food consumption in the United States. And it's been done within this type of centralized, overarching food system, the one world type of food system. And that's where we've been trapped and captured within agriculture and in livestock as well. It's coming.
For sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Oh yeah. I would think one hiccup in that supply chain.
Yeah.
Would
And
impact.
COVID showed that to us. Yeah. COVID showed that to us. JBS, right. JBS is a good example of the multinational corporation. So they, all of a sudden everybody's like, hey, why are we not getting, why is beef so expensive? Why is there a shortage of beef? We didn't realize that we were shipping all of our beef in from overseas. And so that supply chain disruption during COVID really uncovered what was going on. And so JBS went out there and they price manipulated at the retail market for a sum of $500 million worth of profit over 24 months during COVID. The United States government, the current administration, only fined them $56 million for that price manipulation. General public has no idea that this happens. And so right there, that's how separated we are from truth in food. What's really going on within our food systems? Who's controlling the food system? Why is the Department of Justice not all over this? Because it is getting to a point in time, and you heard me say this in Nashville, that our basically lack of market access to our own domestic food supply is becoming more of a national security issue than people realize. And that's Dr. Brooke Miller. You're talking about what happened this past weekend in DC. He's past president of the U.S. Cattlemen's Association. He was there in DC with that group of people saying, hey, folks, it's time to wake up.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So these is tied to, so you're talking about shake your ranch or salmon. There's so much to get into here.
Right.
I understand. So when you get your, let's say you got that same package of ground beef from a rancher in your region, or at least in the U.S., someone you've decided to trust with your food supply, that their package of ground beef, they would be able to tell you exactly where it came from, I assume. And, so and what went into that cow. So what they fed it, the medications it's had, so forth.
Well, this is where, goes back, processing and packers. Where's the bottleneck? Where is all of this happening to where, they can actually, build this type of regulatory corruption into labeling and, distribution? Well, it's at the processing center. Okay. And once again, perspective. I live in Texas. We have 254 counties. We used to have 254 microprocessing centers in each county in the state of Texas that process local, basically agriculture, local livestock, be it poultry, be it hog, be it, beef. And so what have we got now? Well, we've got 4 multinational corporations that have basically, replaced those 254 microprocessing centers. And so, yes, I mean, you were in Nashville, you ate those tomahawk ribeyes. Well, all that beef you ate came from one producer. That's Cole Bolton of K&C Cattle. Well, his hometown meats processing center in Luling, Texas is USDA. It's a smaller micro processing center that we used to have in the United States. We used to have in abundance. Well, that's what we surrendered over to these multinational corporations, that control to be able to build, facilitate, and take to market locally raised protein. And so that's what this nation's waking up for. That's what the Beef Initiative is now successfully stewarding. We're building processing centers and we're educating people. This is what you have to where you can actually just have 1 pound of ground beef from one cow. And you know what that cow, basically who the rancher was, the genetics, where the forage, the soil, what did it feed off of? Was it grass fed? Was it grain finished? What was it? What was that input protocol? You and I have talked about pattern languages. And so what is the input protocol of the soil, the grass, and the cow? That's what most ranchers in the United States love to talk about every day. But now they have a general, public that doesn't even have access to know how to have that conversation. Hey, what'd you feed that cow? Why did you feed that cow that type of input protocol that you did? Is it because you're in West Texas and you suffer droughts, or is it because you're up there outside of Nashville and you guys get so much rainfall? This is where we used to talk. We used to have these conversations. We don't do that as a nation anymore. We just look at the label and go, hey, is this going to be healthy? What are the omegas? Well, who knows? Well, we can tell you the omega 3s, the 6s, because we know all the input protocols of the soil, the forage, and the cow. So we're just getting back to where we used to, where we came from. That's what's exciting for where we are right now.
Yeah, it sounds like with a little bit more science and insight than we ever talked about before. But I mean, you can actually talk about the things that people are asking about or looking for.
Exactly.
With precise knowledge, whereas there is none of that coming from the industrial system or the CAFO system, which is what most people associate with the beef industry as a whole.
Right.
And I think what we're seeing is a big distinction between those two systems, including like how they're fed and the ability to track what's in your packaging. And I would guess that's where the hormones and the antibiotics are coming into our beef is in those CAFO systems because of the way they're having to live.
Yeah.
Okay. So
let's talk about
you don't need to do that.
Yeah, let's talk about the life of a cow, right? In the United States now. Let's talk about that. That's the best, thing to do. You heard me talk about, Dr. Brooke Miller of Ginger Hill Angus. That's his ranch outside of Washington, Virginia. Okay. He's a cow calf type of guy, but he's also a seed stock guy. He raises some of the best bulls. Okay. Angus genetics. That's what, really a lot of people are eating these days is the Angus cow genetic line of beef. Okay. So saying that he's a bull guy. He's not a cow calf operator, like you say, these CAFOs. So you have all kinds of different types of ranchers, producers in the United States. You have your seed stock guys, you have your cow calf operators, you just have people that just love to raise beef, right? And so there's so many different ways to get in to be a cattleman or a cattlewoman in the United States of America. And so what we've done as well as a nation is that we've really overly kind of homogenized what it means to be a rancher or a producer, a grass farmer or, a cattleman in the United States. And so let's look at that because what we have is too many trends that influence people's decisions whenever it comes to health of a cow or health of, the soil or even what is USDA prime? What does that mean? Well, that's more of a, it does have a lot of scientific meaning in it, but, within the beef initiative, we can talk about those omega 3s and those omega 6s because we've also been doing those types of studies of soil, of basically the flesh of the cow themselves to see, the nutritional guidelines that we want to follow. Not something that's been put in by a 3-letter alphabet, agency in DC. And so that's where we are going to start creating this pattern language of education, understanding of what does it mean to have clean beef? What is USDA prime? Well, we've got some different basically equations, and they're more natural and they're more organic and holistic. They're not some scientific data-driven model that was created by Monsanto or Dow Chemicals or even Farina, nah, we don't need you. We're going to let nature do what nature's always done. We're going to talk about biology more than we talk about science. Once again, this is what people don't understand that they've done with our food systems. Food is not science. Food is biology. Let's get back to that.
Gotcha. Going back to more of an organic way of raising it.
But not using this pattern language of, but not using all this stuff that people think is what they need to know because all of that corruption is taking place. I mean, you look at the FDA won a lawsuit in the fall of 21. You can search right now on Google, FDA lawsuit, GRAS rule, GRAS. So if we're going to talk about all this vertical integration of labeling and pattern language and everything, well, in 2021, the FDA won a lawsuit to where they can basically inject 2,000 new chemicals into our food system under a certain type of rule that, that we put in agriculture called the GRAS rules. generally recognized as safe. And so, they won that lawsuit to where they can actually inject 2,000 chemicals into our food systems and not even tell us what those are because they say that they're safe. So whenever you have a type of food system and an integrated lobbying system that lets these 3-letter alphabets dictate what is safe and what is not safe, and saying that we're all the same biologically and that some unknown chemical is not going to harm you, is BS. And that's what this nation doesn't understand, is what's happening to our basically food systems. Well, what's happening to our health? It's the same time that these types of laws are being pushed through with no media coverage or anything like that. I mean, how can you make definitive decisions what food is or what health is whenever you've got these governmental agencies dictating what they're going to inject into a food system that your metabolic system now has to figure out? And so what we do is that you go out there and shake a rancher's hand, he's going to say, well, I've been doing this type of, engineering with this type of grass farming with these tools. And that's all these cows are land tools. And this is what we basically preach about, within the Beef Initiative, saying, let the cows do their job. They're the best form of basically carbon, sequestration there is. They've always been that way. And so, this climate change and the carbon hazard and the cows, are unhealthy. Well, let's uncover the harvest of deception once again. What's really going on here within our food systems?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So it sounds like it's the full system that is really flawed from the beginning. And so let's talk a little bit about where the CAFO system. I think the idea of the grass-fed, grain-finished, or grass-finished is sort of a kind of a red herring. It's kind of another one of those marketing terms I think you mentioned.
Sure.
How this impacts, ultimately impacts the environment as well.
Yeah.
So when these cattle come into these CAFO systems, they could be coming from any number. They could be coming from U.S. ranches, or they could be coming from foreign ranches as well. Yeah.
And that's what I said we would do. We'd walk through the basically the life of a cow. So this is going to be let's just do it right now. Let's have a workshop, because that's probably the most useful type of content that I can be doing moving forward, especially after the last 4 years. Okay. Here we are. We've got a consumer and we've got a rancher. We've got basically a seed stock guy. We've got the genetics guy. We got the best genetics of the Angus cattle in the world. We're in Central Texas. Okay. This is how it's all going to play out, basically. Okay. I've got partnerships across the United States with some of the best cattle ranchers and best, processing centers in the United States. Well, I'm going to go to Cole Bolton of K&C Cattle. I'm also going to go to Clyde Summerlotti of 2 Bar C Ranch. He's got some of the best genetics of Angus cattle in the United States. And I'm going to say, hey, when did you start a herd? Well, we've got a herd of this certain type of bull that's been sired. You've got your mama cows, you got your daddy cows. And so what you do is you start creating a herd. Okay. And so I now have access to everything that they've done to create a herd. Okay, from the genetics of the calves to the mother to the father of that calf. And so I now know where that calf is going to be raised. What is the basically feeding system of that calf now? Okay, this is where we need to get back to where we used to do it. Okay, I've never met a cow or known a cow that didn't love grass. Okay, all cows are grass-fed cows, or they should be. Okay, cows love grass. They've always been on grass. A lot of things that are going on in the United States right now. So it's like, oh, is that grain finished? And so we think that grain finished is bad. I think that a nation really doesn't understand why they're collectively. I don't want to generalize too much, but collectively, I don't think this nation understands that grain finished beef is some of the best beef in the world when it's finished correctly with the correct grains. Okay. What people are very against right now is genetically modified grain finished beef, because that genetically modified grain system is from Monsanto and this whole centralized, basically multinational system that has destroyed our soil, destroyed our cows, basically, in a lot of ways. It's destroyed our forage. It's destroyed us in so many different ways. What we're trying to get away from, once again, is the chemical engineering of the input protocol system within cattle feeding. Okay. We want to get back into a more natural regenerative input. A lot of people are pursuing grass finished beef right now. Well, that's excellent. I love it. Jason Rick of Rick Ranches in Colorado. He's part of the Beef Initiative, some of the best grass finished beef in the world. But he'll be the first to tell you he has a system to where he can finish off that cow grass finished in a way to where he doesn't have to rely on a grain-based finishing off. Not every rancher in the United States of America can finish off beef grass finish to bring you the taste profile that you want, or for that cow to even be healthy. And so let's stop right there. The difference between grass finished and grain finished beef. Why do we like it? Why do we hate it? Why are we talking about it the way we're talking about it in the United States? And then I'll tell you, my ventures, I've been to Australia, I've been all over Asia, I've been on 4 continents, 2 different hemispheres over the last 24 months, looking at the global beef intelligence. So I can speak to it of why are we talking about beef the way we're talking about beef in the United States? Well, it's a marketing plan at this point in period of time. Let's get perspective back to it. So why do you think that everybody thinks that grass finished beef is the best? What do you hear from your side of things, from your, feedback from your clients and everything?
Well, the belief is that grain finished causes sickness in the cow because they're fed grain for the last 3 months or 6 months, whatever it is of their life.
Sure.
Creates sickness within the cow, creates an immune reaction, and they need antibiotics and they need hormones to add to the growth. But basically, they're just trying to fatten them up, and that has a negative impact on the stress of the cow as well as the fat profile, the omega-6s, like we mentioned earlier. But again, the addition of hormones and antibiotics really is a big component too, because of the impact of the grain on their digestion.
Sure. Yeah. And guess what? They're right. They're 100% correct. Are they correct all the way? No, they're about halfway there. Right. And so go back to Cole Bolton of K&C Cattle. Okay. He does grass finished but he does grain finished. That's what he loves. He's from East Texas. He's a commodity cowboy. It's in his DNA. Same with me from West Texas. I mean, we grew up commodity. That's what we do. And so, that's what most of this nation is, commodity cattle. Well, let's go over to Jason. Okay. We got Cole Bolton. He does grain finish. We got Jason Rick. He does grass finished. Okay. And they both have the reasons they do that. What a nation believes is that Cole Bolton finishing off with grain is going to be, that's going to harm that beef more so than what Jason's doing over here. It's not real. That's not true. What Cole's doing is that he's out there and he's basically engineered, and he's one of the smartest cattlemen that I know in the United States, along with Jason. But he's basically facilitated a new input protocol that's all natural. It's organic. It's everything that is not bioengineered and not genetically modified. And we can verify all of this with his grain finished beef. Okay. What a nation is afraid of right now is that, they're saying, well, this grain finished beef at the supermarket, it was done nefariously. It's done by a multinational corporation. It's, the last 90 days, like you say, or last 30 days, it's just to fatten it up. Well, they're right. I mean, that's what you do to a cow. You fatten it up so you can make the best, price possible. But what happens if Cole Bolton, let's say, okay, we got Jason and you got Cole. Well, you talked about antibiotics and steroids. We don't have to use antibiotics or steroids. There's very few injections that either one of these cows receive on both sides, from grain finished to grass finished. But one thing that Cole has access to, that if he has something that he does have a sick cow, okay, and he's got a pretty good size herd within K&C Cattle, and that's what everybody's eating through the beef initiative is that clean beef. If he does have a cow that gets sick, he can save that cow's life, but that cow gets taken out of that herd. and it's now sold into the commodity commercial herd system. Okay, he has an option of another bid. Okay, and this is what we don't have in the United States as far as producers. Okay, if you're regenerative, let's reverse that. You're over here, Jason, and you don't want to sell in the commodity commercial system. Okay, what happens to a cow that gets sick? Well, and if he doesn't have basically an auction house to where he can sell that calf is never going to be eaten. It's never going to be basically sold. Where is that other bid for that cow? That's what we're doing in the beef initiative. There's always another bid to basically for the producers to be able to sell that cow after they've basically engineered that input protocol system of feeding for that cow. Right now, it's auction house straight into the multinational system. At the beef initiative, what we're doing with these microprocessing centers and different types of clean, holistic, regenerative input systems, be it grass finished or grain finished, plus a decentralized microprocessing center, you can now have options that you haven't had in the past. And you know that it's just not grass finished beef that's healthy. You got some of the best grain finished beef that we can speak to, like the omega-3s, the omega-6s, just in line the same way that we can talk about the grass or the grass finished beef. We can talk about the grain finished beef the same way that your clients are wanting to talk about right now. And that's what I'm going to start moving forward with, are all those studies of both finished off of those input systems, of those cows, of those ranchers, of those producers, and the differences of nutrition and different types of forage across the United States. We've got all that information. You know, you were just in Wyoming. That grass system up in Wyoming is different down here than it is in West Texas, right? Or even out there in Colorado where Jason is. Let's talk about that. And that way we can inform the public, but we can also help all these producers, because now we're developing another bid because everybody's getting educated now and consumers are changing their demand into a system that they understand now and that they trust, instead of just being, guesswork. It's like I'm going to Kroger's here and it says, I don't even know what country that's from. And so if you don't know where your beef is coming from, right, let's get into the mRNA technology and what we discovered in COVID. We now know that they're using mRNA technology in hog in China. So there's a good chance that people are eating hog in the United States that is basically now been facilitated. And we don't have any ways of knowing if that basically hog has been injected with mRNA technology. Robert Malone, Dr. Brooke Miller, that's the type of information that we're bringing to the general public through the Beef Initiative. And so by knowing that, if you don't have country of origin labeling in cattle, well, there's countries that are already starting to inoculate mRNA technology into cattle. 80% of our animal protein in the United States is foreign beef. Here we go. Right. See the conundrum? So you have to go out there and shake a rancher's hand. You have to become more informed as a general consumer in the United States. But as you get more informed, you are now supporting an independent rancher producer in the United States, because all you got to do is go to welcometobeef.com. That's what we created. And like I told you before, we've got over 250 producers and ranchers coming basically that we're supporting in the Beef Initiative. No marketing plans, nothing like that. Everybody just comes through, and therefore you're going to get the cleanest beef in the nation moving forward.
Gotcha. Yeah. Wow. Well, let's try to help the consumer understand this
Sure.
a little more with, let's say with we know what the CAFO system grain fed kind of looks like. That's what we all have in our mind.
Right.
How is it different with, say, what you would do or what Cole would do? How are you feeding grain, and what grain are you feeding to your cattle that keeps you from having to use antibiotics or have the same outcome that you would get in a CAFO system?
Sure. Let's look at the CAFO system. I'm in the top of Texas, and it's the multinational system. It's the belly of the beast. Okay. The multinational system. Like seriously, right in that direction, about 30 miles is, Hertford, Texas. Okay. It basically probably in that town alone, over 20,000 head of cattle are killed every day, harvested every day. You got millions of cattle just right over there. Okay. You want to talk about a feedlot system that would just shock the most, everybody. Well, what is that? Well, it's just miles and acres of basically feeding systems for cattle, right? And it is. They're all basically in there together. That's a multinational system, feeding system. That's not your independent rancher producer. It's not the United States. Think about this. And so why do we have to have all these inoculations and all these antibiotics? Well, when you got a million cattle that are basically squeezed together for 30 to 90 days together, of course you're going to have bacteria. Of course you're going to have disease. Of course you're going to have all kinds of possibilities of sanitation being compromised, from water systems to everything. It's a big operation to pull off. Well, we're not doing it. That's multinationals. What's Cole Bolton and Clyde Summerlotti of, K&C Cattle and Hometown Meats and 2 Bar C doing? Well, they're down there in Gonzales and Luling counties in Texas. Well, they have a smaller, basically, feed yard that you do finish cattle off of as they're being transitioned off of pasture and into basically being processed that will now become basically part of the food system. Okay, so Cole and Clyde have all kinds of acreage across central Texas that they pasture land and regeneratively, rotationally graze their cattle, right? I say whenever the cattle gets to a certain, it's mature, it's ready to be harvested. Well, they take it into a decentralized feed system, feed yard. It is a feed system. And then, okay, what type of grains is Cole going to use? Well, he has contracts where regenerative brown bag is what we used to call it in the United States, brown bag seeds. Okay, these are basically holistic, good seeds that have never been modified, nothing. We know where all the grain is coming from. Okay, basically it's a contract business peer-to-peer system that we know everybody has an input protocol system of organic. We're not relying on a government basically program saying, hey, this is, who knows where the corn's coming from? Who knows where the wheat's coming from? Who knows where any of this stuff is coming from? It's just a system and it has Monsanto Bayer on it. We know that much. And so that's the verification. We don't verify that way. And that's what we need to get away from as far as producers. And that's what we've done in the beef initiative to a certain extent. You're still going to have a lot of industry that you have to use that is in the centralized system that is over here in the decentralized, kind of what we've done as far as the integrated system, from taking, that cow from whenever it is born all the way to your fork. Well, we could speak to that all the way through. And that's what, Cole Bolton started engineering years ago, back in 19, 18, whenever he started a certain herd back there with Clyde. People are still feeding their families off that original herd of beef. Okay. And he's basically used this same regenerative, organic, holistic grain system this whole time. And that beef is just as healthy as Jason's beef in Colorado. And we can look at the flesh of the beef. And basically, once again, we're not going to have a grading system like the USDA because that was engineered by Monsanto Bayer. So.
Gotcha. So he would be feeding specific grains from, like you said, he sourced it from somewhere that has not been genetically modified. It's kind of original or heirloom grains, they might call them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you met.
He's probably not using as much either.
Right. No, you don't have to, exactly, because they're natural, more dense. I don't know if you met Bernie there in Nashville, but Bernie, he's the founder of Better Fed Foods. Okay. And what he's a regenerative input protocol system for the soil, for the forage, but for basically the cow. And so if you look at him, they have a system that operates just like a multinational system as far as, where's his input grain systems coming from? Where is his fertilizer coming from? Where is everything that we're feeding the soil and the forage and the cows, where it's coming from? Well, we have an integrated system, and we can actually now distribute his input protocol system across the United States as well. And so that takes time. And that's what we've been doing in the regenerative agricultural industry in the United States for a while now. And that's where we are kind of turning this page within cattle ranching instead of using that commercial commodity, genetically modified, bioengineered feed, I'm going to go over here to Bernie with Better Fed Foods. And I'm going to actually, that's the other bid that I'm talking about. And the general public's going to want to know, hey, did you feed Better Fed or did you feed over here, you know, this genetically modified system? And so now we can speak to that whole integrated system. And so once again, businesses that are decentralized, that are more holistic, are now working together to come and create these collaborations, kind of like what you and I are doing within the health, you know, of your understanding of health from the humans, my understanding of the health of the soil and the cows. Well, now you're getting all these integrated systems from producer ranchers that have probably pretty big herds that are now having confidence and saying, hey, I'm going to go ahead and switch this full integrated system into this new regenerative input system. That's what we've been working on for 4 years in the beef initiative. So now there is that other bid, not only at the auction house, at the processing center, but also the input protocol system. So it's pretty daunting.
So, but then that's what allows you to tell your consumer exactly to the beef.
Yes, 100%.
There's nothing random about what's going on there.
Right. There's nothing random. And that's what, once again, though, we have to give perspective. People will say, well, I want to know and exactly where that cow came from. Well, that same person is pulling over, you know, 2 days later to eat at Chick-fil-A. Well, you don't know what's in, you know, Chick-fil-A. So, you know, let's get perspective of why are you asking the questions you're asking? Are you actually asking the right questions? And who told you to ask those questions? Let's understand what the right questions to ask. That's my job, to basically get people to understand that we're not asking the right questions when it comes to the quality of beef. And we're not asking the right questions when it's coming to the health of the soil or the health of the cow itself. So let's start asking the right questions. Let's deliver the right answers, and let's all start sharing that collective knowledge together. And it's not a marketing plan. It's it's a workshop that we're doing together in real time. And that's what's beautiful about the beef initiative, because it's just never ending. You're always we're going to start doing herd shares where the consumers do have access to basically invest into their own personal food systems for their family. It's like they're not going to be all guessworking anything about their food systems anymore. You're going to come to the beef initiative and you're going to say, hey, there's Texas Slim. I'm going to get into his herd share program that he announced was Zane Griggs. And so your clients will now have access to basically our herd share program through the beef initiative. So that's what we're going to start announcing to people. So no guesswork there. You know exactly. Yeah. And then and you have access to us. You know, we're out here talking every day. You're going to say, hey, man, I just, you know, I know who basically grows my food for me. And it's a wonderful feeling whenever you have that type of relationship, because you start forming a better relationship with yourself. And there's an obligation there of spirit that you're like, hey, man, I'm going to support this rancher, because we have to, man. Zane, we lost 27,000 farms and ranches in the United States last year. And, you know, that type of CAFO system that you're starting to learn so much about, that's under attack as well. So what happens whenever we don't know or don't have a personal relationship with those ranchers and cattlemen, cattlewomen that are trying to feed us? What happens? Well, we've lost them forever, and that's where we're going.
Right. Well, you know, it reminds me, I just kind of step back one minute with the grass-fed thing. I had a client buy grass-fed, grass-finished beef at Whole Foods, right? And you're thinking, okay, it's this organic, you know, regeneratively raised, grass-finished hamburger. But they somehow, for some reason, they've already started this labeling system where they, you know, it labels where the source of that beef is. And it said product of Uruguay and Australia, just as you mentioned earlier. And so, okay, so you got a 2-3 pound maybe package of grass finished beef. You're assuming it's going to be US, you know, raised on grass the whole time. And it's coming, just that little package is coming from 2 different countries. So like you said, you can imagine it's probably got at least 80, 90 different individual cows in that package.
Yes.
If they're coming from 2 different countries. come from different countries,
Yes.
but it's still grass finished. It's still grass finished, but the grass finished doesn't mean what what you think, what you would assume it means.
Well,
And so I think that was really has helped me. Like it was a big eye opener. Like that confirms what I've just been trying to
yeah,
understanding what you're saying. Is like there's more than one way to finish a cow that has nothing to do with where it came from or the
right.
quality of the meat that you're eating.
Yes. And
So
that's where,
the
once again,
really,
and yeah, and that's the education that we really need to lead with. To where, okay, if you know exactly that you said is definitive and true, accept that it's true, and you don't know where that beef is coming from, and that you, the individual, have to go out there and facilitate access to food that you know where to get it. Well, welcome to beef.com. Right. And welcome to beef.com. That's what we tried to do, is to make it that simplistic. Will Harris of White Oak Pasture, he was the first producer in the United States that introduced grass finished beef to Whole Foods before old Bezos owned Whole Foods. Okay. Now you look at Whole Foods, I call it whole paycheck right now. But what has changed since Will Harris introduced that protocol, that input protocol system into Whole Foods? A lot has changed since, Bezos, Amazon bought Whole Foods. And you're just, once again, Uruguay. Okay. Grass finished beef from Uruguay. Okay. Did they use mRNA technology in Uruguay? Are they using it in Australia? Possibly. Do you know that as a consumer? No. Do you know that as far as Whole Foods? Probably not. Are you going to? Nope. So, I mean, what kind of verification are you wanting to know within your food, right? Okay, it's grass finished. Well, it might have mRNA technology in that grass finished beef. Is that the best beef you want to be eating right now? Or do you just want to go down and shake a rancher's hand over your shoulder that's just 20 miles, maybe even just 10 miles down the road? You found them going through the gates of the Beef Initiative. Welcome to beef.com, peer-to-peer, basically market access to those people in the United States wanting to feed you the best food in the United States with the best dense microbiome technology, biology, that is out there. We got to eat where we stand, right? I mean, that's part of our health too, that a nation that doesn't understand. What have we done to our microbiomes of our guts? And so, the Beef Initiative, I started just everything. I mean, this is a health initiative, for a nation right now. And it's a health, and it's a health initiative for our producers because we're losing too many of them. So let's connect those dots. And it's not going to be done through Whole Foods. That's for sure. It's going to be done through, personal relationships that you steward as far as the individual. I will not eat at the supermarket. And it's not because all supermarkets are bad, but I can't verify it, man. And I can tell the difference whenever I'm not eating basically food where I know where it's coming from. And you do tell it there. You know this as far as, whenever you travel and you have to eat other food from you feel it, don't you? It just automatically. So
yeah, immediately. Yeah.
yes.
Definitely feel it for days.
Yes.
There's like a
Yes.
hangover effect.
Right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Both, not only in the preparation, but the sourcing. Absolutely. Yeah, that's really, that was really an eye-opening understanding of this. And then I started looking at the full system. I mean, the economic system, you said, the food security, keeping our ranchers, who are really, I think of as our earliest, small business people for this country. We're ranchers and farmers.
Yes.
And we're losing that sector of our small business. And if we don't support them, they're going to keep getting kind of shoved out of business by the multinational system, just by way of economics and efficiencies and so forth. It's just because they're subject to it. They're subject just to this control over the system and supply chain. The advantage that these systems have, these multinational countries have, is that corporations have, is that they're feeding their cattle from a subsidized resource, a government subsidized resource of the monocrop cycle. And I think 90% of our soy meal and about 40%, over 40% of the corn raised in this country goes to feeding cattle or livestock of some kind in this
Yes.
industrial system, which you guys are not, which the ranchers are not partaking in at all. They don't have that
But
advantage. You're buying high-end food, but the
right.
multinationals are getting subsidized, so made cheaper. This food's made cheaper and for a reason, and that those monocrops are then damaging our soil in a way that's preventing the soil from absorbing the carbon that everyone's complaining about. This complaint, and they're saying they're blaming the cow farts. They're blaming the cow fart for a buildup of methane and carbon, which recycles back into the soil if you have good soil. But we're destroying our soil with a monocrop system that's feeding the industrial system.
Yes, the industrial system.
Like there's two different like flywheels here of we got a monocrop farming system with a multinational economic system and supply chain with really low quality food. And then we have another flywheel with like the high end grain, like you mentioned, the grass from wherever that region is, to a high quality, an economic system with our nation's earliest, independent ranchers and small business owners who are trying to feed the country and being driven out of business, but they're creating the best beef. So you have two different units that really operate independently of each other for the most part, other than a little bit of overlap when one's got to sell the other. But for the most part, they can operate independently. They're not dependent on the same inputs or systems.
Yeah. It's basically the bottleneck of basically commerce. That's where we're screwed up, because that's where we basically, who's profiteering, who's gaining, who's losing, right? And you just pretty much gate that two flywheel system here. That's exactly where do you play in that as a producer and a consumer to where it doesn't screw the producer and the consumer up, right? That's what we have to figure out. And that's what the Beef Initiative figured out. That's what you and I figured out. That's what we're trying to tell the nation. Hey, this is this two flywheel system, and this is where you need to be playing a part of it and where you need to get out of the system. And whenever you have different options, you have different ways that you can spend your money or invest into a new herd system in this basically genre. So of thought and of commerce, that's what we're talking about. All this happens because who's making money and who knows how to make that money? Is it free money or is it real money? Is it hard money or is it debt? Is it USDA insurance policy or is it, is it cash money from a consumer? Where, let's quantify, what type of money is being exchanged here in these systems in this two flywheel system as well. And so that's where it gets very complex and inundated, especially. So, but talking about that, basically, as far as where's the value of the cow, that's a good question that I challenge both consumer and producers, both across the board. And you look at the auction house, right? We're talking about the other bid. Whenever a cow calf operator takes, that calf all the way, let's say, 2 years, it's a good, mature, ready to go to harvest. Okay. He takes it to the auction house. Okay. It's time to basically sell your herd. And this is where he has to go sell his herd. So the other bid, okay, right now in the United States of America, we've got the lowest inventory of cattle over the last 70 years. Okay, let's think about that. What's been happening over the last 2 years? Because it takes you 2 to 3 years to grow a really good herd. Okay, just in generalization. I'm generalizing right now. All you ranchers don't assassinate me. For we're trying to make a point here. And so if you've got basically the auction house right now for over a year and a half, we've had the record high prices. Okay. So who's the auction house? That's the multinational system. That's wholesale beef. So you've taken this cow calf operation. You've got a big herd. You got to sell your herd. It's time to start over. You've got to profit. You got to make your margins and you got to invest into your next herd so you can maintain being a cattle producer. So you have to sell. Well, you you're doing great right now because the auction house prices are the highest they've ever been. You don't even have to worry about taking your beef to market because you're making so much money right now at the wholesale level that you don't even have to take your beef to market. You're not worried about it. You can start another herd. That is what is currently going on right now. Okay. Being the lowest inventory we've had, where's all the beef? If we got low inventories, we're shipping all of our beef overseas. Okay. Our producers right now, we have the lowest inventory of cattle domestically than we've had in 70 years. How are we going to rebuild our herds? What happens when the auction house basically price manipulation? And I believe that's what it is at this point in time, just like JBS did at retail. I think they're doing the same at the wholesale level. Okay. They've basically liquidated our inventory in the United States for our cattle. Okay. Now they've got all the beef. Okay. They're going to turn beef into caviar in 2020 because now they own all that beef because they've been given high prices for it. Where's all of our basically domestic cattle? Where's our new herds? Where's the money? Well, where is this money that was basically been paying at the all these record profits at the auction house? Well, I think that's USDA money. That's government basically lobbying money. Well, I'm not for sure yet, but that's a lot of free money that's been being shopped around and the cattle industry for 2 years. When the cattle industry drops down, what you'll see at the retail market is that they'll turn beef into caviar. Then they'll keep it there as far as retail price in the United States of America because they're still shipping all our beef overseas. They're making record profit overseas. Now they're making record profits domestically because we have such low inventories. They can be justified as far as, as supply and demand saying we ain't got that much beef. And we got 2 to 3 years before we can rebuild all our domestic herds. And so they can cover up the truths all day long. So where is the value of the cow right now? And so we have to keep the value of the cow. We have to become the other bid, as I say, by consumer demand and by keeping our cattle away from that auction house, but actually going through the gates of the beef initiative to where we know that you're going to be able to resell that cattle either through a herd share program. Right there, a herd share program. You don't want to go to market with your beef, but you want somebody like Texas Slim's Cuts basically to go to market. So you have an input protocol system that I use that we're going to start talking about me and you as far as the cleanest beef in the nation. You can now sell your herd into my integrated, basically white label branded beef system instead of going to the auction house prices. So we're going to basically be able to reestablish where is the value of the cow, who's making those profits, and who basically is generating that demand of that profit, where it's going to be the consumers in ways that they haven't been afforded to over, especially the last 20 to 30 years. And so this is kind of that transitional pivot that we are in our food system. And that's why we've been building what we've been building for 4 years so we can be ready for that demand. I still don't think that we're going to be able to match the domestic demand that comes in through basically the beef initiative from the producers and the consumers. And so, because I really think that's where we are in the food system. And I think this whole integrated system that is pretty corrupt right now, that's going to be basically uncovered and people are going to say, screw you. Well, now we can catch that demand. Like I say, I'm just worried if we can, because I think it's going to be that big. I really do. Yeah, I think this is a shift. We had a shift in food systems in the 70s in the United States. This is the same shift that we're about to go through. And it takes a full decade to get through. That's where we're right in the middle of it right now. Because if you look at climate change, you look at Monsanto, Bayer, you look at their food systems, you look at the multinational systems, there was massive consolidation back in 2017 to be to where we are right now. They got their marching orders then to do this shift. And so we're behind as far as the general public understanding what's really unfolding. But once again, the Beef Initiative has known about that shift ever since back in 2019. And so that's what we've been building towards, to where it kind of comes a tsunami of change. Well, we're there to, here we are. We know what you've been doing, guys, and we're good. Thank you. Appreciate you. And thank you for scaring the crap out of everybody and trying to make everybody believe that a cow is a carbon hazard. Now everybody knows it's a lie. And now we're going to show you why a cow is probably the most cherished livestock, animal on the planet right now. And we're going to basically re-educate everything that they've been trying to tell this world. Because, I told you I've been over to Asia and Australia. Well, there is a massive marketing plan that is coming, and a lot of people already see it today. Everybody's, becoming a vegan, they're basically marketing to the younger generation of idealistic minds, this basically, getting people to willingly starve themselves nutritionally in idealistic ways. This is not the first time that societies have done this. And so I've seen the after effects of both of the industry side of things, from the cattle industry in Australia and in Asia, all the way over here to the United States. And so what you're having a massive marketing plan that's going to be coming, and it's going to be really just compounding the lies about nutrition and food, and how basically, how do we feed ourselves? What is nutrition? What is food? What is a cow? And why are we basically demonizing the cow? Because if they keep on continuing to have success with demonizing the cow globally, like they are with the WHO and the WEF and this climate change, what happens to the marketing plans of beef in the United States? Once again, pattern language. They're redefining what meat is in that basically pattern language definition within the USDA. What does that mean whenever they redefine what meat is? And then what do you think, basically, whenever you're eating 30% cricket dust now that they are saying is actually protein, and they're going to be able to say it's meat? Well, you're not going to know this because they're manipulating the labeling laws, the food laws, generally recognized and safe. Here we go, right? So they've got a system that they can manipulate until the cows come home. And they want to make sure that you're not eating cows anymore in the Western Hemisphere, because everybody doesn't understand that there's been some new ranches that have been built across this planet. The East is now becoming the West is becoming the East. The East love to eat beef. And now in the Western Hemisphere, everybody's being told that beef is going to kill you. And so, Once again, this is a global industrial food shift. And so what's the messaging? What's the marketing? What are we doing within governments? What are we doing within industry? And who's basically supplying the content, the definitions, and then the end product? What is going on here? And that's the global industrial food shift that I talk about.
Absolutely. Like you said, they're going to make beef caviar. So the price of our beef is going to be increased so that we're eating less of it, and then they can ship it off.
Well, we won't even want to eat it though, right? That's the plan. It's like, we're okay. Hey, it's science. Hey, we're evolving as a species. We don't need to eat this. That's archaic. Oh, we're more sophisticated now. And that's what they're really doing. And they will capture people's basically, imaginations, and they're basically consumption models by that type of programming, even propaganda. It's just propaganda. And this is what we're up against. This is an information war. And whenever it ends up basically being delivered the way that's going to in the Western Hemisphere, well, our children are already sick, and so are the adults. This is not going to fare well for us, because what they do is they make beef look, they make meat look, they, declare it a carbon hazard, and then they inject what I like to call them fake commodities into our food systems that are forever injections into our food systems, kind of like what they did with seed oils, what they did with canola. That's just one little example that there's no reason that we should have ever consumed canola oil in the United States of America. Do we know why we do it? No. Do we think it's nutritionally healthy? We don't know. It's just there, right? It's just there. But because it's just there, we consume it. We don't talk about it that much. But what happens? We create a whole industry around a fake commodity that never needed to be there, but is making hundreds of billions of dollars for the multinational system, because they know how to game the system, and they know how to game the medical system as well. And that's basically where we've engineered the medical, pharmaceutical, agricultural complex, they're all working together. They have their own flywheel of death and destruction, right? And that's where we're up against. And that's how we've got to exit out of that system into a new flywheel system, like you said earlier. And it's not as hard as people think it is. That's what we have to basically bring that clarity to everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's plenty of motivation to do so.
Yeah.
Even from the rancher standpoint, if they're coming into through the beef initiative or beef.com, where they're selling just directly to consumers, they're
Consumer, right.
Across, maybe, the auction system may give them a better wholesale price now and then than they do on other years, but across the board, I would think long term, they're going to get more money from their beef from a direct to consumer approach than they would from the multinational wholesale auction system. All right.
Well, and they will, and it is. And once again, this is a generational shift within mindsets of ranching and producing too, right? Let's talk about the old school boys, the OG. You got to give them all the respect in the world because they basically are, everything that we are as far as culture and heritage. And these guys don't like change, and would they? They basically created a cattle industry that is robust. It is the best in the world. It's the best that's ever been created. But what we did is we basically we went to sleep on the watch on a few things when it came to technology. And the technology that was integrated into our food systems and within cattle ranching is basically where we've gone dark as far as understanding what's really going on. And so me being a research analyst, I really like to bring that to the producers' understanding and mentality. Hey guys, we're in a different game here. Technology is going to be used against you in ways that you don't understand. And one example that I'm starting to bring and talk to, which I don't talk to, is a lot of people in the cattle industry, the independent producers and ranchers, are the ID chips. Okay. And that's something that, the air chips, and they're trying to digitize our cows in ways it's not needed, but they're going to make the general public think that it's sanitation, it's safety and all this, but it has nothing to do with that. It's basically more of track and tracing, just like they're trying to track and trace us. During COVID and everything that they're going to continue to try to do. COVID was just a beta test. And so they will continue to make us try to comply. Well, they're trying to make the cattle industry comply into basically the digitization of our cattle. And that's just something that cannot happen. If that happens, and I don't want to go into it on this podcast, but that's probably the beginning and the end of independent ranchers and producers in the United States. And that's not being dramatic whatsoever. There's a lot of good use cases for using digital technology to track inventory. Sure. Boom. Let's do that. But beyond how they're going to take this and padlock into enforcement against our independents, and then what they'll do is they'll leverage into more basically power of being able to sell their beef anywhere in the world they want to sell our domestic beef. And so they'll just basically be able to say, hey, look, we can track this Texas beef all the way into some of this best grasslands and the best genetics of beef in Texas. And you, Mr. Asian businessman, have, full rights to everything about that cow, about that producer, rancher, and everything. And who's going to be making the profits there? It's not going to be the rancher. The rancher will be used just to do the dirty work. And that's nothing new, nothing new. So, and it's just going to be a system of control. Yeah. Yeah. What will you do?
What you're saying,
yeah.
Middleman and go right to consumer.
Sure. Yeah. And what we are right now is we have the technology use agreement. Monsanto created it in the 80s. Like if you're not using their seed, their basically integrated system of herbicides, pesticides, their genetically modified seed of 2024, then you're out of business. And this is how they will treat the cattle industry. And this is how they will be able to use the RFID chip the same way they've used the technology use agreement. Technology use agreement. That's very telling whenever I say the word technology, because that's what they're doing. They basically go in there and say, hey, this is wonderful for you today, but in 2030, man, you're not even going to be here. You're going to be out of business. And we're going to make sure of it because we're going to leverage this technology to make sure that whatever it is, You won't be able to have basically interstate capabilities of commerce because you made a mistake and they now have it digitally tracked through a RFID chip. This is what the producers and ranchers don't understand. It's like, well, I'm not ever putting one of those on my damn cows. Well, you'll never sell it at the auction house. Okay. So what happens to that cow when you can't sell at the auction house and you're not USDA certified as far as your processing? So they know what they're doing. And most producers and ranchers are going to be, in the dark about basically a lot of the intentions that are basically being engineered by, a system that has captured us in a lot of ways.
Wow. Wow. Like they're doing with everything else.
Yes, pretty much. And
we need to go back in time a little bit. We need to go back to where
we do
in the 60s, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, let's talk about the farmer's market. Well, the farmer's market used to be fun. You used to have, guys, they would say, hey, it's fall. And, during the summer, it's produce and they get to exchange everything. Well, that's where they're talking about, hey, I've got a hog over here. I've got a herd here. That's where everything happened. That's where the barter system had started really materializing peer to peer. You got to talk about your season. You got to talk about, are we in a drought season? It's not going to be as good this year. What affected your harvest? And this is what we've lost. And you should eat the seasons again. You should start living like your grandparents. You should not look at it like, hey, you're basically engineering anything that's going to cause any suffering. It's a lifestyle that I think a lot of America needs to get back into. You look at, I was listening to Tucker about 6 months ago, Tucker Carlson, and he made something very, very, very poignant point. Every American should get in their car, if you live in the city, and drive 500 miles. And, it doesn't matter the direction. Tell me what you see. Well, I've been doing this for about, 5 years on the road. I've traveled 172,000 miles in a pickup truck. I've been on 4 continents. I've been around the world twice. I know what the United States of America is right now, and we're hurting. We're basically a food desert right now in the United States. We have a lot of marketing plans that work. We have a lot of basically, food that tastes good, but we don't have a lot of health that basically backs that up as far as that should be what we're consuming. And if you drive across the United States of America right now, you'll see that we are a food desert. And most of rural America that used to be the most healthiest and the most empowered in the United States are now just as bad as inner city. Because if you go to rural America, you have a Dollar General, you have a convenience store, and you have a Walmart. That is basically what rural America, that's what we're feeding. We don't even have access to our local eggs, our local butter, and our local beef. And so if that's the case, if we don't have direct market access to our own food supply, what does that say for our nation? Who controls that food supply? Who owns Jimmy Dean? Well, that's owned by the CCP of China right now. So let's get perspective. This is a global industrial food shift. And people don't realize that, we said that we were going to go feed the world back in the 70s. We never fed the world. We didn't. We created basically a highly profitable, subsidized distribution system that benefits a lot of multinational corporations. And basically how they got there is no different than like big tech works right now. Do you think that Facebook went out there and engineered all the code that Facebook uses? No. Meta owns, that's Facebook. Who owns Instagram? Did Facebook really go out there and create Instagram? No. Okay. So you look at these multinational corporations and how they go after food systems. Well, they go after and they basically successful food systems. In our basically system in the United States of America, we've been selling all of our raw materials to multinational systems for a long time. And the gig is up. And I think that, people are going to start waking up to that fact.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. It's a racket that's it's pulling from our health. It's pulling from our economy. It's pulling from our environment. We talked briefly about regenerative ag and the impact that would have on on pulling carbon back in. I think a lot of people don't realize that carbon gets pulled back from the soil because of the health of the soil. It can actually stimulate rainfall in that area when you improve the soil, which is what a lot of these ranchers do with, like you said, the cow being on that soil. And some of them are using these regenerative ag techniques that are taking what you like in Texas, where you have the 9 inches of rain a year, if you're lucky, right? And you have that little buffalo ground,
Right.
these drier areas. And in a matter of a few seasons of basically strategic grazing, essentially is what it is.
Yes.
They're seeing bees, birds, new grass growing, or just grass that was dormant in the ground. It just didn't have the inputs, the stimulus that it needed, right? From a lot of them coming from the cow, but they're seeing birds, bees, eagles, other types of animals coming back into those areas, and increased rainfall just from the way they're grazing their cows on that soil, on that land.
Yes.
And
this is,
to think, and it's not something that takes 20 years. It takes a handful of years. It's just a few years, 3 to 5 years, and you can see a difference. And it's amazing. I don't think people realize the impact that has on all these things we've been told to be worried about and complain, that we're hearing about that are being supposedly caused by the cow, or actually can be remedied by the cow.
Right.
With methods that not only improve the soil, but they actually can improve the amount of food available for their cows and raise more cows per acre than they could have with a different system. And so it boosts the food production, and it improves the environmental impact, which then improves our economy and our food system. And then that, with more cows produced on more land, well, just by supply and demand, you can eventually bring slightly the price of that cow down for the consumer. The consumer will be able to afford it slightly more affordable because the farmer's making more money per acre, right? I think it's a system that feeds itself from every angle, from the environmental, the economic, and the health aspect, as I mentioned before. And we've been sold something completely different. We've just been sold, I think that's what you're saying, is we've been sold a completely different understanding of that system, and that there's no solution. There's the only solution is to limit and to reduce.
Right. Yes. Well, and this is a good time to give perspective back into what you just said, because how simple it is. It's so simple, it's complicated, because what they did, they took one of the best food systems that we've ever created in the United States of America. Let's look before 1971, before we went into this monocrop system, right? Okay. What they did is they took a working holistic food system that we had engineered holistically in the United States of America. You brought up before, back when Thomas Jefferson was here, 99% of people in the United States of America were in agriculture. We had a working knowledge of food intelligence, understanding of where the food came from. So what the multinational system and our money system did is basically I don't even go into if it's nefarious. It's just where we are. So let's just get over that fact. Okay, what we have to look at, let's follow the money. This happened because of a money system that is going into debt. We're $35 trillion in debt in the United States of America. So if your money is broken, your food system is broken too. If your money doesn't have the same value it did 50 years ago, your food does not have the same density of nutrition that it did 50 years ago, because our food system is so subsidized right now that there's no way it could have that same value that it did 50 years ago. And it's simple as that. And so follow the money, right? Let's follow the money. Who is benefiting right now? Who is gaining, is saying what they're saying in a centralized media contract, as they're doing across the globe, of course. But let's go back to Will Harris, and you're talking about what happens to an ecosystem. Well, he does such a fantastic job of his ecosystem of white oak pastures. And I've been out there. We had a beef initiative summit at Bluffton, Georgia, out there with Will and his family. And so we did a pasture move. We did rotational grazing. We do everything. But if you just go to White Oak Pastures and you see some of their content through YouTube or Instagram or their website itself, and you're talking about what happens to an ecosystem, I've seen that ecosystem in action. in real time. And you've probably seen it now, especially with all the works that you're doing within the documentary that you're working on. But that system comes alive. And when that system comes alive, you see the bees, you see the eagles, you see the birds, you see everything just come to life. Whenever I saw it the first time, I thought I was in Africa on the Serengeti because it is that robust. It is that type of ecosystem, but it's because of the cow, because that cow does the rotational grazing, his hoof prints into the soil, how that disrupts that soil, how it generates that basically growth of the forage, and all of that fascinating understanding of that, how that operates as far as just being in nature. Once again, that's what a nation has lost. And we're arguing the fact that we're confused, and we're still stating, we're debating on if a cow is a carbon hazard whenever the cow has been basically honored since the beginning of time. And this is where they are telling on themselves what they destroyed was a system. And now they're telling on a system, and they're trying to reinvent that system that they stole from us instead of just giving it back. We're going to give it back to ourselves. You guys go do whatever you want to in your warehouses. We're going to stay right here in the Serengeti. And that's what we do with rotational grazing within regenerative agriculture, just like old grandpa did just, a couple of decades before. And so we haven't been that far removed on how grandpa did it. And Will Harris will speak to that because his father was a commodity guy. He was a chemical guy. Will Harris is a first generational rotational regenerative farmer rancher. Remember that. And here he is teaching the world now what is regenerative agriculture that he learned not to do from his father. So it's a generational shift. And that's all we're going through here. Let's put it into perspective. Let's just do it right. Let's honor what's in front of us. How did we get here? Both good and bad. Let's honor the good, the bad, and the ugly. And let's facilitate together what's going to feed our children that deserve better than what we've given them right now in the United States.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So the answers are there. And I could sit here and talk, right, for, I don't know, let's create an infomercial, right? And I could do that because this is what we've been doing and building, right? And just as the type of,
Right.
I didn't realize that we were so far removed as far as really understanding what food is. Seriously. I mean, I've met tens of thousands of people, and some of this, you look at the testosterone levels of men in the United States right now. It's the lowest it's ever been as far as in recording testosterone. Why did that take place, and how did it take place? Well, it's because of our consumption model. Just not our food, but our audio, our video, and our food is basically, it's devaluing health in our understanding of what food and health is. Let's be honest about it. Same thing in cattle ranching. It's no different. Same thing that how we're treating our cows now. It's the same way we're treating us. Where's the health and where's basically the death and the destruction? Where are the deceptions? Because we're working in unison here. It's just that it's not healthy like it used to be. And I think that if people can bring that perspective of the individual being a producer or consumer, then you can engineer your own consumption model. And you don't need doctors. You don't need Texas Slim telling you all this stuff. You can go out there and do it on your own because it is that natural. It is. We've got so many means now to go out there and get the type of information that we need to where we can make individual decisions. And I think that's one thing that we have to understand about agriculture too. You don't have to have Monsanto Bear telling you how to raise a cow or how to feed or fertilize that soil, that grass anymore either.
Mm-hmm. Right. We can learn how to do that. We have information and we have
Yep.
people who have done it ahead of us. Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Yep. Yeah. Very empowering.
It is. It's empowering. I think people want to get into it, but I think the best thing to do initially is like you said, shake your rancher's hand. Find a rancher whose hand you can shake, and because they're already doing the work, and
yes,
and start and just shift your dollars, shift your attention, shift your consumption to a better system.
Well, and that's just, this is where we got to change the pattern language. Okay. Let's turn pop culture on its head right now. Number one TV show in the world in America is Yellowstone. Okay. So why is that? Well, everybody likes to hang out with a bunch of cowboys and horses and cattle and mountains and all that, right? But let's look at that. If that's the number one TV show, 4 years ago, that was the number one TV show. But I told everybody, I said, hey, y'all just don't understand this. This is a great American health initiative being led by the Great American Rancher. And why is that? Well, now we get to speak of the why, the what, and that. And so you and I get to go lead a great American health initiative that we've partnered up with about, starting right now, 250 ranchers across the United States of America. We're going to go lead the Great American Health Initiative, and people like Zane Griggs is going to be basically the trail boss. You know, you're going to basically be guiding us from the health perspective, because there's so many men out there right now. We'll start with men. You know, our men, we're in our 50s. Men need to wake up, man. We're not this unhealthy. This dad bod crap that was engineered into our existence is all part of the propaganda, part of all of the studies that they've done on soy protein. Oh my gosh, you should go over to Japan and see the types of studies that Japanese have done on soy protein. Man, they go way back on soy protein. You should see the studies they've done on American soy protein, genetically modified soy protein. What is that doing to our young men in the United States of America? Well, they've got definitive proof that it screwed us up. But, you know, that type of research is not allowed in the United States of America because, you know, it's not peer reviewed the correct way. But, you know, there's a lot of things that we don't understand that they've engineered into our food supplies that are now making us less than men. And that's just something that you cannot argue with. We've got metabolic health under the radar right now in the United States. And we've got all people like you, Dr. Sean Baker, Dr. Ken Berry, Dr. Brooke Miller. We've got so many good doctors and people that are in health and fitness that are working now with some of the cleanest beef in the nation. So you and I are going to go out there and we're going to engineer basically a new health initiative together. So
that's amazing. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm excited about it because it's bringing the solution. You can point out the problem.
Yeah.
You got to bring a solution. And sometimes the first solution is real simple. Is change your consumption.
Yes.
That's wow. Yeah. Very exciting. I think you're right. I think it is a good time the timing is good with the awareness and the seeking of truth and answers and people wanting change. They've had enough of the old way. They've been shown how that way doesn't work well enough, at least
right.
And there's a real grassroots movement to change health and to change our health and change our consumption. I mean, it's an exciting time. It's a difficult task, but it's exciting because of what can come of it, what can be turned around, because we are heading in the wrong direction. It can't continue this way, and us continue to be have the strength of a nation, and then, as you said, on an individual level, to have really healthy children, healthy family. We're watching that disintegrate. We're watching the health of our children disintegrate, where 40% are seeing pre-diabetic or overweight, and so it's much like the rest of the population. And so we're at a crossroads. We're at a crossroads.
Yes.
And the timing is imperative. So I'm 100% with you on that. It's like this is the time, because if we don't now, who knows?
Yeah.
If we
well, let's put perspective. You and I were talking about the strike that's actually it's moving forward on the Eastern Seaboard, starting in the Gulf of Mexico all the way out to Maine. Okay, that's the Eastern Seaboard of the United States of America. Let's go back to COVID. It only takes 3 days to clear out shelves. Okay, so let's put food into perspective. Okay, whenever stuff like this happens, let's say this strike, you're not going to be getting bananas. There's going to be things that you will be able to see that you did not get in a timely manner. Let's look at beef. Let's look at cattle ranching in the United States of America. 27,000 farms and ranches were lost last year. We got all kinds of asset reallocation happening in agriculture right now, where we don't have the same access to grasslands that we used to have because of that asset reallocation. Okay, you're getting something as far as distribution in the United States. 85%, 80% of our beef is coming from overseas. Let's see what happens whenever we don't have access to our own domestic cattle ranchers anymore. Let's see what happens when you don't have access to global distribution anymore. Okay, judge those. Those are two litmus tests that you need to look at as far as a person living in the United States right now. How do you engineer your independent food supply for you, yourself, your family, and your children? Okay. It's a good way to look at things right now. Don't be worried about it. There's lots of people like you and me out there that have all kinds of solutions. And so let's bring that perspective back of the strike that's been going on or about to go on, COVID that went on with lots of, corruption, manipulation that happened there. Let's look at us, every individual in the United States, and let's go individually engineer a food supply system with everything you and I just talked about. And it's a fun challenge to go because it is about lifestyle. This is a lifestyle. It's not a diet. Who do you talk with every day? What are you consuming? What are you listening to? What are you watching? Who are you interacting with? Who are you giving your dollar to? Let's do an audit, and this is a good time to do it because you have a lot of people coming together. It's not going to be so challenging for that individual to be able to go out there and look at everything from metabolical health to your distribution of your food, market access to Dollar General or to Whole Foods. What is it? Are you eating from Trader Joe's? Are you eating, Profits? Are you getting your foods from Whole Foods, H-E-B, Kroger, Costco, Walmart? What's the distribution system that you're relying on? Mine, I know a lot of independent ranchers and producers across the United States. They don't all feed me beef, but I can go to each one of them. They'll feed me beef, but guess what? They know people that make butter, eggs, chicken, hog, fowl, and all just starts falling into place once you go shake a rancher's hand. It really does. You don't have to overthink it. And that's something that we're basically ready to tell the nation, hey, let's work together. Let's do this together.
Yeah, it's a new network, essentially.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. And it's not so hard. It's just, it's change, right? It's just a good change. Most people, man, you look at Sean Baker, I've never had anybody come into through the beef initiative and everything that we've been building out here that basically bitches and moans. Their life gets better, be it producers or consumers. It just happens. And people, it's a great discovery. And it's kind of a treasure map, right? It's like, where do you find your treasure? Is it going to be that producer, that bee? What is it that you find within this type of integrated lifestyle that we're, trying to get a nation to pay attention to? It's not a marketing plan. It's based on relationships with yourself first, and then, within your community and then whoever else.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, where do people find that solution? Where do people find you and find out more? Let's tell them how to get started.
You bet. And this is fun, right? Yeah, because you look at independent ranchers and producers, everybody's going to remember this commercial, right? Beef, it's what's for dinner, right? I mean, that was Sam Elliott. Beef is what's for dinner. Okay, that was in basically the late 80s, early 90s. Let's say that's whenever that commercial, that's the beef checkoff mark. Okay. Every producer in the United States of America has to pay $1 per cow to go into the beef checkoff program. Well, that's that integrated multinational system of USDA, everything that we've basically created for ourselves. Producers and ranchers have paid $10 billion into that program. Independent ranchers, we got one marketing campaign out of that damn freaking beef checkoff. Taxation to a cow as we sell it at the wholesale market. So I tell everybody beef. It's just not for dinner anymore. It's for breakfast, lunch, dinner, welcome
Right.
to beef.com. And so the first URL, if you're going to talk to anybody about that, you need to remember it's so simple. It's welcome to beef.com. And we did that so it could be that easy. Once you go there, sign up, you're going to find everything you need to know and everything that I just talked about. You're going to be able to find it. Spend 15 minutes under the hood of welcome to beef.com. And then, of course, all of the policy work that we're doing now in the Beef Initiative, for legislation to everything you need to be knowing about D chips, anything that is centered towards cattle ranching and beef, beefnews.org. So beefnews.org, welcome to beef.com. And then within a week or two, we're launching beefmaps.com. And it's basically going to rival Google Maps. It's going to be an interactive, layered approach of being able to be anywhere in the United States and the world and be geolocated to the closest independent rancher producer, not only just for beef, but for butter and just anything in the world. Beefmaps.com is coming.
Wow. Awesome.
Yep. Yep. So those 3 URLs, if you can really get intimate with those 3 URLs, follow along, share them to everybody you know. This will just going to compound out. They're going to be able to see all the workings that you and I are doing. I'm about to launch a new website. You and I are basically working together on a new giveaway. We're going to be doing shipping beef across the United States, USDA certified, cleanest beef in the nation. That's going to be you and me, and we're going to be launching that here in a couple of weeks too. So let's get started with welcome to beef.com. That's it.
Beef.com. That's right.
Yes, sir.
Nice to be.
Yes, it is. These days it is.
It is. Well, thank you. Thank you, Slim.
Yes.
Man, it's a wealth of information here. And yet, like you said, it gets real simple. You go to welcome to beef and find your new food supply. I mean, it's that simple.
It really is.
But understanding that what you're doing is benefiting not just your health, but as we mentioned 2 or 3 times, the economy and the environment. There's no reason. There's no reason not to move this direction. It checks all the boxes for any personal motivation you might have to pick a system. It checks all the boxes. So it
really does. You know, I like to tell Zane, because, you know, we live in a very charged environment right now. You know, I tell everybody, this is not political. Don't bring politics into my space. This is not about religion. This is about being human. This is about living on planet Earth right now. Our children and ourselves deserve better when it comes to nutrition. You know, this nation is overfed and nutritionally starved right now. You cannot deny that fact. And so this is not a judgment against anybody. We all got here together, man. So let's just, let's all basically work together. Lots of grace, lots of gratitude, no judgment. Everybody else is out there doing that. This is about basically, really establishing these relationships that are about, loving each other, supporting this nation, basically being proud of where we come from. So let's just start with our food, right? It's real simple. Let's just start over. But we got a lot of people that helped us get us here. So that's the way I look at it.
Gotcha. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's a network. It's everybody doing their part. But it's not a one, this is not lifting up one person or one entity. This is about changing the whole system for everyone.
Yes.
So it's everyone.
Yeah.
So this is not glorifying one corporation or one, individual, someone trying to make leverage the system in their favor. This is about improving the system for everybody. And so I think that should be very clear now if you're understanding how everything works. This benefits everybody in every way. So man, it's exciting. It's exciting time to
it really is
part of this and to see the health of the nation shift. Happening on a grassroots level.
It really is. And, you look at this integrated system that you just kind of said, it's an integrated system that we're moving forward with. It's got some improvements. It's got some new technology. It's got some new inputs. But my dream is, all right, multinational corporations, you can't, shut us down because we're decentralized and we actually follow the law and write the law better than you guys are doing. So why don't you guys adopt what we're doing? And that way everybody wins because we're doing it the right way. It's just about truth and food, man. That's all it is. Let's get back to truth and food. Quit lying to us when we're not going to lie to our consumers, and we're going to be honest about food. So once we start doing that as a nation collectively, you cannot stop truth. It's just a timing issue. So let's just speed up that timing issue of truth, and let's do it together.
Absolutely. All right. Wow. We got a lot here. Well, thank you. Thank you, Slim, again. Amazing.
Thank you, Zane.
A lot to do, but it's all good work. And I'm looking forward to partnering up with you to move this forward. We'll probably be doing more of these.
Yes, we will. I look
real soon as well.
Yes. And what we're going to do is let's make a series out of this. If we have the time and, once we get moving, this is a lot of information. Let's break it down into categories because that way, this is a good introduction. But I think we need to do a kind of a seminar based. This is what you really need to, because there are going to be people out there that want to go talk about this to their family and their friends. Let's give them real true action items that they can true follow up with. And that way it'll be more of a workshop seminar type of, because we're ready in the beef issue, we're ready to start talking that way to the general public.
That's amazing. Yeah. Great idea.
Yeah.
Great idea. Yeah.
All right.
Inform people, educate them, arm them with the truth, and then let them take action.
You bet. 100%. All right, Zane.
Well, I'll be talking to you real soon. Thanks, Slim.
Yes, sir.